Well, there's life after Derby 150. Settled back and welcome everybody to this latest edition of WPT and 30. Settled back in to very, I would say, sultry. The weather's definitely turned here in South Florida. It was a very mild, dare I say, chilly winter for South Florida, but summer feels like it's in the air. But it's good to be home. Derby 150 was incredible. Jason, Joe Bianca, Tom Murphy. Good to see you guys on. We've got to do, guys and boys, a recap of what transpired without making this podcast 3 hours long, which it could easily be because West Point had a ton of horses racing. The Derby itself, combined with McPeak and Brian Hernandez sweeping the Derby and the Oaks, I mean, you could really spend a lot of time picking apart both races. For the sake of brevity, we'll cover everything without hopefully spending too much time. I always say that. I say that every
Sounds like
week.
your intro is not
Yeah.
promising for
Yes. Yep. For sure. I'm
nothing new.
already doubting myself. Yeah. I like to talk, and I love racing, and we all love talking West Point horses. But Joe, I'll start with you. What about it, my friend? I mean, Derby 150. You couldn't have asked for not only a better weekend of racing, but I mean, a three-horse photo finish like that was just. I mean, it was awe-inspiring.
That was as good as it gets for a Derby. And, obviously the story of Ken McPeak and Brian Hernandez sweeping is the main story. But I thought the story was that there was a ton of great performances all weekend. Over 700 horses competed that last week at Churchill Downs. Over 700 horses came back to the barn safe and sound because we all remember the headlines last year surrounding the Derby. It was an overwhelmingly positive event. Even if you didn't cash or whatever, just to have that battle down to the line, have no negative headlines surrounding what was a phenomenal Derby, the first three-horse photo, I think, since like 1947 or something. It was exciting as hell. I had people text me who are not racing fans right after the race, like, that was awesome, man. And that's what you want. On a big day, our biggest chance to show what we do and our best to the world, you couldn't have scripted it any better to me.
Yeah, the vibe was just terrific. I was fortunate. Christina and I were fortunate enough to be there at Churchill. And although I was there and we were there as guests of Mike Rapoli and wanted fierceness to win so badly for Mike, who's been a very close friend of mine for going on 20 years. We've been friends. I met him in '04. I've done numerous derbies with him, multiple Breeders' Cups, including the famous Uncle Mo Juvenile one. But this might have been my favorite derby that I've attended in person. I mean, the vibe was incredible. And Tommy, you were there as well. We got to spend a little time with each other on Friday. And I mean, what can you say? Churchill Downs did a great job, and it was a phenomenal weekend. It has all of us, me included, like really amped and jacked to move forward, not only to the Preakness, but of course the Belmont Stakes in Saratoga.
Yeah, and word on the street now is, Ken McPeak's kind of looking at Mystic Dance, seeing if he's going to want to send with the Preakness or not. He's run him off, 2 weeks of rest, I think, end of last year, and he didn't fire all that well. So he's up in the air. Of course, I would love for him to run, just to even have, potential for a Triple Crown bid to extend to that third leg this year up at Saratoga. But I mean, the race was fantastic. The crowd was awesome, as you said, and anyone that was there, you got to see a new paddock. That paddock is breathtaking, especially under the lights Saturday night on opening night. There was just fantastic. But Churchill did a fantastic job. 150 was a huge undertaking. It was, very, very highly talked about, even outside of the industry, as Joe mentioned. I know on Sunday, I don't know if anyone here, like myself, is a NASCAR fan, but they had their closest finish ever. And, their official Twitter account was posting the side by side of their finish with the Kentucky Derby photo. So I thought that was great to just kind of get that out there. A lot of positive social media presence for racing. And I mean, this race is after the race, I said to myself, it happens every year. No matter who wins, the race always ends up being just fantastic. And I couldn't be happier for Kenny McPeak and especially Brian Hernandez, who's a great guy. And you can see him here. I mean, tales of, Corey Lanerie and Calvin Borrell skating the rail at Churchill Downs and getting up in the big one.
And you get a really good look at it. And in wholehearted agreement with you, Tommy, just as far as your summation, and as Joe touched upon too, just the positive feel good vibes in stark contrast to how we all felt a year ago. But you do get a very good shot of just how tight it was. I mean, between the rail and track phantom, I mean, clearly they bumped.
The rail.
And yeah. And that was, as Ken McPeak said, before the horse even got back to be unsaddled, that was the winning moment right there. And you're going to have Mystic Dan. Fierceness got the trip that he wanted and just came up empty. Mystic Dan approaching the 16th pole here with Forever Young in those blinkers and the maroon silks between, and Sierra Leone on the outside. 3-horse photo finish. Let me start with you, Joe. I mean, do you think Mystic Dan, I know he won the race, was he best? I mean, oftentimes in Kentucky Derbies, maybe the best horse, in someone's opinion, wasn't necessarily the winner. I mean, where do you stand as far as like the first 3 horses go?
I mean, they all 3 ran winning races. That's they all 3 were deserving winners, and you could say that Forever Young and Sierra Leone each cost each other the race. And yeah, Mystic Dan saved all the ground. If you look at the Trackist data or whatever, he ran way fewer feet than the other 2. But you got to take into consideration that he was way closer to the pace than those other 2. Because this was a pace that collapsed. Nobody else in the top 6 was anywhere close coming down to the wire. So even though he did save ground and he did get that garden trip, and just what a gutsy move by Brian Hernandez to punch him through at the rail there, he ran a lot harder early than those other 2 horses did. So bottom line is all 3 ran winning races. All 3 would have been deserving winners. But I think from a story standpoint, I guess the Japanese horse would have been really cool too. But I don't know, for Kenny and Brian Hernandez, that's the best story I think you could have gotten out of that. And how about how cool Kenny was in those interviews? I don't know if you guys saw it because you were there, but like the Oaks interview and the Kentucky Derby interview, like you would never have been able to tell that he just won a giant race. My producer, Patty Wolf on Rail Talk, was like, I get more excited when strawberries are on sale at Trader Joe's. Like, he was just as chill as you could possibly be. And the other thing too, and this is the last thing I'll say about Kenny, is it's so typical of him. A $40,000 purchase wins the Oaks, and a homebred with a pretty modest pedigree wins the Derby. I just can't think of a guy in this business who gets the most out of his horse flesh than Kenny McPeak.
Definitely. I said it because I liked Torpedo Anna in the Oaks, and Mystic Dan. I mean, I'm not patting myself on the back. I thought both he and Domestic Product had a chance to run well, and mentioned it on our podcast a week ago. I thought both horses were live long shots. And I said something along the lines of, Kenny's never been a 25-30% guy. He's never been that guy, but he runs his horses. I mean, this is a guy that runs his horses. And as Joe correctly stated, he doesn't have a barn full of $1 million yearlings. I mean, it's a really blue collar barn, but he's won some incredible races. And he's one of only 5 active trainers that are still alive that have won at least one leg of the Triple Crown. And there he is, Mystic Dan, skirting away there from Sierra Leone and Forever Young. Tommy, moving forward to the Preakness. I mean, we're taping this Wednesday, the Wednesday in between Derby and Preakness week. We're 10 days out until the second jewel, the Triple Crown. I think Mystic Dan's going to run, but it's funny moving forward. In my mind, even though the Preakness field really isn't set yet, and of course we're all waiting with bated breath what they do with the Derby winner, and I think he will be in the second jewel. But the way I see it, Muth, who beat him pretty handily, is going to be like even money. I think Muth is going to be a pretty big favorite at Pimlico in a week and change.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Bob's kind of figured he's going to the Preakness with his horse. And he probably knew that, whoever wins the Derby is going to show up, and he probably is going to want to try to run him off the racetrack, just kind of, try to prove a point. But like you said, even money, again, it's Baffert, so I wouldn't be surprised if the horse is like, 4 to 5 even, maybe even lower. And, his prep race in the Arkansas Derby was awesome. Obviously, he ended up beating the future Derby winner. So it's hard. It's going to be hard to try to find a way to not use him. Right, Trevor? Who do you got?
Yep, for sure. Well, there's your chart. Mystic Dan by a whisker there in Derby 150. Just a phenomenal race, phenomenal weekend. And And we'll see. We'll see who moves forward. I mean, clearly, Joe, the in vogue thing is to not run back in the Preakness. If you're a Derby also ran, I mean, geez, in this day and age, you're not even guaranteed the Derby winner running back in the Preakness, which is a real shame. Anybody else catch your eye as far as aside from the top three that you might want to look forward to running? I mean, what do you do with fierceness moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that was just, it was kind of predictable to me just because of the kind of horse he is. He's an in and outer, needs things his own way. I got to give a shout out to Tommy, who liked Resilience. I thought Resilience ran a really big race, made that big early move, kind of almost made the lead at like the 3/16 pole or so, and then just faded a little bit late. Of the also rans, he's the one that I think is most interesting going forward, especially like Tom said when he picked him. He's a Bill Mott trainee. You got to think he's just going to get better and better.
Okay. Don't want to slight the Kentucky Oaks fillies. I mean, Torpedo Anna, whose fantasy win was as good as any race, arguably a better race than pretty much any 3-year-old filly, to my eyes, had run this year in the United States. She was able to pair up a giant effort, pretty much took control from the gate over a wet track and kick clear for a convincing win in Friday's Kentucky Oaks. It looks like, and again, there was some talk Friday night, certainly before Mystic Dan and the same trainer and jockey won the Derby, that, maybe we'll run her back in the Preakness. That seemed, even forgetting about the fact that she wasn't nominated to the Triple Crown and it would cost $200K to get her into the Preakness. That seemed, I don't know, it just seemed like a ridiculous notion to me. And once the dust settles, it looks like her and Just FYI may have a rematch in the Acorn on the eve of the Belmont. We'll talk about Sedona a little bit later in the podcast, but they're not superstars. And again, don't want to take anything away from them. They're two very high class 3-year-old fillies, but I don't know. I wouldn't be running to the windows no matter who shows up at the Acorn to take a short price on either Torpedo Anna or Just FYI in the Acorn. Let's talk about this filly right here, Tommy Murphy. I'll turn it over to you. You're one of the biggest Vahva fans that I know, and believe me, I know a lot of Vahva lovers. I mean, how good was she in that rivalry she's got with Alva Star? I mean, the two of them put on a show. Dude, 103 buyer. I mean, that was like a Derby Day performance for the ages out of Vahva.
100%. And you got to give my flowers to Tommy B. You know, he was spot on with this horse. You know, Irad was not going to get beat again. I mean, I thought he rode her to perfection. Alva Star gun to the lead, and we were just right there, right off her, tear our way around, and just pounced. And really, we got to see how awesome she is. And you know, she was due for his grade one, and she's wholeheartedly deserving of it. I think she hopefully has a few more with her name written on for the rest of this year, but that was special. That was a lot of fun. You know, anytime you can win a grade one, especially a grade one on Derby Day, I mean, that can't be beat. And after the race, for probably about 30 minutes or so, I was sitting there, my hands were doing this. I was so amped after that. It was awesome.
No, she was awesome, and I'm sure, like you guys and many others that are listening and watching this podcast right now. I mean, I've watched the race numerous times since I got back to the hotel room Saturday night and saw this picture on Twitter this morning. I just got like chills looking at it right there. I mean, look at her, and this another great one, Joe, with Irad Ortiz and Cherie. You know, they've been well, they've been like a trainer jockey tandem for many, many years. I think, Joe, like, you know, Cherie's old job working for Chad Brown, you know, the success that Cherie and Irad have had together, but to branch out on her own, she's clearly a trainer that's going to continue trending up. It was pretty special, I think, and I haven't talked to her since Saturday, but I would imagine for a guy like Irad to win her first grade one, pretty special there with Vahva.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I gotta think with Irad, sometimes like it's gotta be old hat winning all these graded stakes all the time. So I think he does get legitimately excited for trainers and for the owners, and because he's an absolute monster. He does everything right, and he fits her like a glove. So yeah, that was a really great moment for Cherie. Very, very well deserving. And similar to Kenny McPeek, I just think she's one of those trainers that gets the most out of her horses. Vahva was not a 7-figure purchase, 280K. That's Keeneland September. Obviously, that's not nothing, but it's, you wouldn't think, okay, that horse is going to be a grade 1 winner at that price. And she's worth a hell of a lot more now than that. And yeah, she's done an excellent job with her, has pulled every right lever, and it's pretty cool now. I mean, there's a long way to go, obviously. I got a lot of respect for Alvastar, but it's pretty sweet to have at this point the leader in the clubhouse for an Eclipse Award.
Definitely. Perhaps one race at Churchill, then Saratoga. We all want to see her romp. I mean, go unbeaten the rest of the year. That goes without saying. But boy, oh boy, I've been daydreaming even prior to Saturday. It's like, oh, well, I really hope we have her for the Ballerina. And then, of course, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. But congrats to Vahva. She was terrific. Our shug horses, all of them throughout the weekend, starting with Sedona on Friday, and then we had the two boys in with Integration and Cugino on Saturday. Everybody ran well with perhaps less than perfect trips. It's going to happen, especially on the grass the Turf Classic was a 10 horse field, and easily the best group of American turf horses that have met on this continent so far in 2024. Tommy, Integration got shuffled back a little bit early on from the rail after he broke well, and he was just never really able to get clear sailing off the far turn out in the clear.
Yeah, he just kind of got stuck in kind of wall of horses really almost the whole way around. I mean, they weren't, if I remember right, they weren't going ridiculously fast. They were going pretty slow, and it just everyone kind of bunched up. I remember Tyler told me after the race, he just kind of got stuck behind that bunch of horses, and then, it took him a while for someone to open up and be able to shoot through a hole. I thought there at the end we were going to get up for third, and we lost third in that photo. Obviously, that stinks, missing some more grade 1 black type for him. But again, I thought he ran really well. Just one of these days, we're going to get a nice trip with him, clean trip. Hopefully one
on
that
firm ground, and it rained too,
very
and
firm.
I think
what he
right.
need.
I mean, everybody's on the record, and I think in agreement, including Shug, that the firmer the better for him. And the good Lord willing, Belmont week at the Spa will be just picture perfect weather. I'm ready to see this guy. We've already beaten program trading once, my friend, right, Tommy? I'm ready to get the better of him going a mile and a quarter on the Belmont Day undercard.
Yeah, it's time, and like you said, to give us a bright sunny day, no clouds up at Belmont, or excuse me, Saratoga. Get a fast turf course, and hopefully this time I would love to break outside. Give us an outside hole next out, and let's get a nice clean trip and make a huge sweeping move and go finally get his grade 1.
Yep. I asked Shug, I'm like, do you still think he's that level? It was kind of like a silly question, I guess, more of like a rhetoric question. And Shug's like, no, believe me, this horse is legit grade 1 quality. He's, again, we've already been beaten, or we've already beaten I'm Very Busy. We've already beaten program trading. So clean trip and some racing luck overdue for Integration. And it's a similar situation, Joe, backtracking a few races to Cugino, who ran 4th in what was easily the best group of 3-year-old turf horses run thus far in the country this year. Never really had. I mean, would you agree? I walked away just like, and he ran big. He fired. He tried hard like he always does. But I'm like, man, again, another race where he just did not have an easy trip.
Yeah, I just want to go back to Integration for a second. Like, I think he needs a more aggressive ride. This race reminded me a lot of the Pegasus Turf, where Warm Heart was where I thought we were going to be, and I thought Warm Heart was going to be, and that ended up being the difference in the race. I felt the same way in this race with program trading. I would have liked to be where program trading was, where Flavian Pratt had him. It was a brilliant ride, and we just were a little bit too far back. He does have some speed. I think he needs a more aggressive ride, and so we're not at the mercy of whether or not there's going to be a pace or whether or not we're going to get through. Like, just send him, get him in the clear, and let him do his thing. So that's just my piece on Integration. As for Cugino, like, I don't know about you guys. I felt like he wasn't handling the turf course. I saw him bobble a couple of times on the back stretch. I saw him jump leads a couple of times. And to his credit, he still tried. And he beat the big favorite, the Charlie Appleby horse home. Never really threatened. It was such a weird race. I mean, you get 47-1 over 24-1 over 36-1. It's just one of those races that like it was a little bit of a freak show, honestly. Like I didn't know what to make of it. But I thought he still tried hard. I didn't think he loved the turf course. He was a little further back than I would have liked to see, but I didn't think Javier did anything particularly wrong. Similarly, there's a graded stake, maybe even a grade 1 with his name on it. He's a hard trying horse who's deserved better than the results that he's gotten. In this race, maybe that was what he deserved was to be fourth, but overall he's due for a good trip and some pace in front of him and a firm turf, and then we'll see what he can really do.
I'm anxious to see him go even a little bit longer in the plan. I spoke with Shug pretty early Monday morning just to recap everything, and Shug's bullish on the Belmont Derby for him. He's also added, Castellano said, despite the fact he was never really in a great spot throughout the race, horse felt great in blinkers. So perhaps you're right, Joe, and it was more a case of him just not loving. I mean, it rained there. Ton of rain Thursday into Friday. It was cloudy all day Friday. It misted a little and drizzled a little Friday on Oaks Day. So that turf course never really had an opportunity to truly dry out. So firm ground, mile and a quarter in the Belmont Derby sounds like it's going to be the next spot for good old Cugino there on 4th of July weekend at the Big A. Oaks Day, our first starter of the weekend, happened to be Sedona. Was really pleased. She didn't win, but Joe, I often think many times you can find out more about a horse in a loss as opposed to a win. And despite not winning, I thought Sedona had a lot thrown at her and did just about everything right amid pretty tough conditions, just with the sloppy track, the layoff. I mean, she had a lot against her, and she was finishing like a wild horse at the end of that race.
Absolutely. And it reminded me a little bit of her debut where on the backstretch, I thought we were in trouble. She was way, way back there, and I was like, uh-oh. And then just like her debut, she just took a little while to get going. And by the time she did, she was absolutely motoring, like you said. Go from 10th to 2nd in a dirt race. I don't care what the pace is. That takes a lot of guts and a lot of talent, especially second time out, first time versus winners. First time 2 turns, a lot thrown at her, as you said. And I think the great thing about her and what's so exciting is she clearly wants to run all day. There's a lot to say about having a filly who is going to be awesome at those classic distances, a mile and an eighth, even a mile and a quarter, sometimes in certain races. She is. Her potential is through the roof, and I hope that people stay patient with her. I know Shug will, because that's just his MO, but she's just one of these horses who I just think needs more racing to get to her peak, because I do think when she gets to that peak, she's going to be one of the top fillies in the land. And yeah, I was really, really proud of her after seeing the slop and how far back she was to finish up like she did.
And the winner was good and is a very talented Juddmonte homebred there for sure. Yep. So again, good effort out of Sedona. Welcome back to her, and we'll see her in Saratoga moving forward. I mean, perhaps a race like the first major goal, assuming she keeps progressing, which we're all steadfast in that belief. I mean, you got to be thinking like Alabama could really be her coming out party later in the Saratoga summer. So our Derby weekend ended about an hour and a half, give or take, before Derby 150 with integration and that less than perfect trip in the Turf Classic. However, Tommy Murphy, we were right back at it at the Big A in South Ozone Park, Queens on Sunday, not only winning, but running 1-2 with a pair of Clermont fillies and the license fee. We got Don't Look Back at All in the white cap there, tracking second, and Gal in a Rush in the black cap, who ran a phenomenal race in her 5-year-old debut. This just put a big smile on my face, my friend.
Same with me. I mean, obviously, Don't Look Back at All. Never really did look back in this race. I mean, she ran phenomenal. I think it was her third start of the year, maybe second. I'm forgetting right now, but I mean, she ran huge to win this race. And Gal in a Rush too, coming off the bench. I think it's been a while for her, and then for her to come off the bench and run this well, and especially to get the black and gold run 1-2 in a stakes race on Derby weekend anywhere. That's a huge accomplishment, and you can see how determined Don't Look Back at All is here. I mean, she wants it to here, and then you can see Gal and Rush come flying. And right about here, I knew this was going to get pretty interesting because it looked like Gal and Rush had a little bit of horse, and I was hoping that we'd run 1-2 right about here, and then obviously it happened. It just couldn't ask for a better way to end it.
Yeah, Gowan Rush finished up so strongly there. Just a phenomenal effort out of both fillies. Joe, an excellent job too by you hosting Tuesdays at 2 with the Clermont Barn, and I thought Miguel was terrific on there. What you were there? I mean, you got to witness that 1-2 finish in person. What'd you think of both fillies, or the one filly and the mare on Sunday?
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I was thinking in my head, I think we got a good shot to run 1-2 in here, and to see it actually play out on the track was awesome. It was great. We went up, had a little champagne toast in the owners' lounge afterwards. Lots of happy partners, and yeah, I think if you're a Gal and a Rush owner, you could probably be a little frustrated that if she had had a little bit more pace to run at, and if she had maybe not angled out or angled in a couple times in the stretch, she should have gotten up. I thought we might dead heat for a second there, which obviously was the top of the top. But listen, you got two really rock solid fillies. You know my feelings on Don't Look Back at All. She's one of my favorite horses in the barn. Like, she just shows up every single time. She breaks great. She's able to sit off the pace a little bit. Again, I think Irad fits her perfectly. He didn't really urge her that much in the stretch there. She did it mostly on her own. She's just a rock star, and especially being a Pennsylvania bred by Peace and Justice, like, she has just overachieved so much. And Gallina Rush, like, for her first start since the summer of last year, like, she really came running. Like, she had been off for so long, you would have understood if she ran kind of a flat fourth, just needing the race. But for her to finish like the way she did, I think 6 is a little short for her. Christoph and Miguel yesterday were talking about the Intercontinental possibly for both of these fillies. I think that hits Don't Look Back at All right between the eyes. Maybe a little bit short for Gallina Rush, but with no Belmont, it's not like there's going to be a lot of 7 furlong opportunities for her. But yeah, like, just two rock solid fillies who show up every time, regardless of the pace. And yeah, it was really exciting. For, like I said, for two fillies that really give you their all every single time, for them both to be able to strut their stuff and lead home a West Point 1-2, you can't beat it.
Definitely not. Kertez for the Clermont Barn. I just checked. No overnight yet for Saturday, because we're throwing a 1-2 punch in the Man of War, the Grade 2 Man of War, which forever. I mean, when I got into racing, not only was it a Grade 1, it was a September fixture during the fall meet at Belmont. I mean, most horses would do maybe the Sword Dancer or the Arlington Million. You'd run in the Man of War, you'd run in the Turf Classic, and then you'd run in the Breeders' Cup Turf. I mean, the game is no longer like that, unfortunately, and a lot of these stakes have kind of bounced around on the stakes calendar throughout the last few years. So it's now a race in the first part of May, but I'm excited, Joe. I mean, Kertez is going to have to run better than he did in the Pan American. He was good. This will be a better field, and then you've got. And it sounds like Miguel's really bullish on him as far as the way he's trained coming out of the Pan Am. And then on the other hand, Ohana Honor, who's hitting his best stride. In my mind, he is just like, when I think of like the prototypical like Shug archetype, it's Ohana Honor.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no horse, at least in our barn, that exemplifies Shug's approach and the way it pays off better than him. This is a horse, I've said this before, this is a horse who was 0 for 6 to start his career. A lot of trainers would have dropped that horse then, if not earlier. And Shug was always adamant that there was more inside of this horse. He had the thing with the ridgeling, we made him a ridgeling, which I think really turned the corner for him. And he's just gotten better and better and better and better. And now we have probably going to be a pretty short price in a Grade 2, should be a Grade 2 major New York turf race. And yeah, Kertez, I'm really excited about. I think he's got a really high ceiling this year. But yeah, Ohana has just, if you asked me, like, give me an example of why Shug McGahee is in the Hall of Fame. Sure, he's trained champions, but his work with a horse like this that needed time, needed patience, needed a little bit of work physically. This is Shug written all over it.
And we've got a busy week with Shug, not only with Ohana, and he's he's the star of that barn as far as this week's concerned. And good luck to both Kertez and Ohana Honor in the Man of War on Saturday. But Tommy, we've got Signator coming back, drawing a line. I think many of us just drew a line through his race on Pegasus Day in the Fred Hooper. Shug gave him a little bit of a breather, sent him back up to Dr. Eisenman's place in Ocala. He's back. He's training well, and I think he found a really nice 3 other than on Thursday at the Big A.
I'm right there with you. Obviously, the big gray horse I looked today, I think he's 5-2 on the morning line. So obviously he's going to be very well respected. And like you said, I think this time off is really going to do him good. And, sometimes these tappets are a little bit of head cases and they're a little bit tough sometimes, rough around the edges, if you will. And so Shug, I think, has done a fantastic job with them. And we know how talented he is. And this little break, I think, is going to push him back into that form. And we can really have a fun year with them because I know he's got the talent for it. And I know we have the right trainer to get it out of him.
Definitely. Puvi's in for Cherie. Zverev is in for Cherie. And it sounds like both David and Cherie are really bullish on Zverev raising his game. I think many of us felt as though that would be the case, just the way Cherie trains and as far as that horse really stepping forward in his most recent start when he won on Jeff Ruby Day. You were there, Tommy, at Turfway, got a big figure. I mean, that race came up pretty fast on Bayer, but looking at the horse updates, I think last Thursday or the Thursday before, there were some David and Gordo comments, and I'm like, wow, he really thinks this horse is going to improve, I think, drastically off the race you saw up at Turfway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, why not? I'm excited to get him going again. Like you said, Jeff Rubin at Turfway, I was up there. I thought he ran exceptionally well. He almost kind of took me back to how well he ran that day. So I'm really excited to now we can go against winners for the first time with him, and hopefully look forward to taking another big step forward here and get our picture taken.
Definitely. Juan Valdez is running Thursday Friday, correct, at Churchill Downs. And then everybody's favorite Indiana bred Joe, Runaway Rojo, has got his next race coming up, which you got to love that little chestnut.
Yeah, man. He's as solid as they come. And he's a great case study for why you run horses where they belong. He just fits that Indiana bred horseshoe program to a T. He's made several $100,000 that way. Not every horse has to be a grade 1 winner to be a fun horse and to be a lucrative horse and to give you lots of action and lots of wins along the way. Run them where they belong and they'll reward you. And West Point in Dallas has done that to a T with Rojo.
And we'll do that with our 2-year-olds. We've got a little room left, just a little, on the Big More Than Ready, who Miguel, I thought, had a lot of excellent insight on. And just in terms of buying that horse from Randy Miles, the same consignment, we got our grade 1 winning Carson's Run, who took us to the Breeders' Cup. Love the More Than Ready. We actually had a few sales of that horse today. Joe, you sold a little bit right before we started the podcast. So did I. So that is a horse I wholeheartedly suggest you take a look at if you've been on the fence or you haven't bought one yet. And the Jimmy Creed, Tommy, West Point and Jimmy Creed, I don't know if there's another stable in the country that has just been able to hone in on the good Jimmy Creed. We've had fun with his progeny in the past, and can't wait to get that guy up to Tom Morley later this summer.
Yeah, big Jimmy Creed fan, and he doesn't stand for a whole lot, but I don't know why. I think he should be a whole lot more with the racehorses that he throws. I mean, a lot of them are just stone cold sprinters, milers that are just tough as nails, and they're going to find a way to grind you down and beat you.
Yep, definitely. And on that note, we will say so long. Thank you for tuning in to the West Point we'll call it this week, West Point and 40 on the nose, guys. We started at 4. It's 4:40. We appreciate everybody tuning in and listening. Congratulations again to the 2 gals of West Point, 1-2 in the license fee on Sunday up in New York. Great times ahead. We will see all of you soon. Saratoga, the Big A, out west, Kentucky. And for Tommy, Joe, and myself, we'll catch you next time.